Welcome back everybody to another very special Reggae Spotlight video. This one is a sequel to a video I did in 2017, which was a tribute to the Blood and Fire Reggae reissue label out of England, which was hugely influential on me as a budding neophyte reggae listener in the 1990s and going into the 2000s. Blood and Fire was founded in 1994 and ceased in the early 2000s. One label that started out the following year after Blood and Fire Records was called Pressure Sounds. They are still going today, and the reason for this video is they've just reached a milestone of 100 regular album releases. It is this one, totally new to me, very rare and obscure. Original of this will cost you hundreds of dollars if you can find one. It is by a group called Mojo, which was based kind of between Jamaica and east coast of the US. Mojo, Rockers from the Land of Reggae. It's the 100th release on Pressure Sounds label out of the UK. Mojo was basically fronted by a guy called Philip Fullwood, who worked quite closely with Burning Spear in the 70s. A couple of years before that Mojo release, he had released a dub album that he had put together called Words in Dub. This is actually came out as the 101st release on Pressure Sounds. They split it up into 2 LPs. Both of these LPs, the originals, if you can find one, like I said, hundreds of dollars you're looking at. And as Pressure Sounds have been starting to do lately, they've released it as kind of a double CD with the Rockers from the Land of Reggae album, and put the Words of Dub in as a bonus CD, as well as adding bonus tracks. So very nice. I decided to splash out for both versions as it's the 100th release. So I thought I would take this opportunity to look back on some notable releases from the history of Pressure Sounds. I was buying many of these as they came out. Picked up some of the earlier ones later on as I came across them. The very first release on Pressure Sounds was from 1995. It was called Santic and Friends, An Even Harder Shade of Black. Compilation of the producer Leonard Santic Chin is his name. Great artists like Horace Andy with Problems, Augustus Pablo, Gregory Isaacs, killer stuff on there. They would also return to Leonard Chin Productions later on with another compilation called Down Santic Way from 2005, Pressure Sounds 46. The next release was Dub to Africa, only the second release on the label by Prince Farai and the Arabs. Pressure Sounds was actually founded by Adrian Sherwood of On You Sound label, and groups like Dub Syndicate, Creation Rebel, all revolving around his On You Sound production house. It was also run by, co-founded by Pete Holdsworth, who was more the managing operator. And Adrian Sherwood was very close friends with Prince Farai, got his start in production working with Prince Farai. He was absolutely devastated with Prince Farai's senseless murder in the early 80s. So definitely early on in the label, he mined the connection with Prince Farai. This would be followed by further volumes like Cry Tough Dub Encounter, Pressure Sounds 13, Chapter 1, as well as Cry Tough Dub Encounter Chapter 3. That's only the 7th release on the label. Health and Strength, Prince Farai, and Psalms for I, based on the biblical Psalms set to reggae rhythm tracks. Early on, there were a couple of compilations released by Pressure Sounds that were deleted or became quite hard to find. I managed to track these down back then. Some of them have since been re-released, but a couple of these are still fairly difficult to find and go for a few dollars. One was a dub set by great producer Keith Hudson. I did an early reggae spotlight on him. This is his dub album called Brand. Pressure Sounds re-released this later on in the catalog, but this is the original. Pressure Sounds CD 04, only the 4th release. They did one on a very obscure artist called Enos MacLeod, the genius of Enos. Late 70s rockers style. One's long deleted, quite tough to find. and also an excellent compilation of UK reggae releases, Don't Call Us Immigrants. That one is from 2000, long since deleted. They also early on began an association with the great producer Lee Scratch Perry, resulting in a series of releases throughout the label's history. The first one that appeared was called Voodooism, compilation of Black Ark Productions. This is PSLP 009, only the 9th release on the label. You got the Upsetters, Earl 16, Zap Pow, killer stuff on there. And this would continue to very recent days with the release of titles like The Return of Sound System Scratch from 2011, Dubplates and Rarities from the Black Ark, and Sound Doctor, more Lee Perry Rarities, 2012, and Roaring Lion from 2013. In a similar vein, they would, not too long ago, release a series of releases based around the great Yabby U, his productions. Deeper Roots appeared. This is Dubplates and Rarities, kind of similar to some of those Lee Perry releases. Dubplates were special mixes of tunes meant to be played on sound systems. They were exclusive to them, never really intended to be heard by the public. So it's a great boon to the collectors to be able to hear these things. Some of them are fairly rough condition. They were pressed on acetate, so Pressure Sounds have rescued them as best they could. There was a second volume, Deeper Roots 2. These are from, this one's 2014. And they also reissued Yabby U's Beware Dub, Killer Roots dub set. Expanded to 2 LPs. This is from 2016. They also did a series of releases based around the very prolific late 60s and through the 70s into the early 80s producer Bunny Striker Lee, hugely prolific. They did 3 volumes of his early reggae productions, kind of late 60s, early 70s era. Full Up appeared in 2014. Next Cut appeared in 2015, the following year. And also did Tape Rolling. The 50th release on Pressure Sounds was a various artists compilation of rare singles called More Pressure, Straight to the Head. I think this is another one that was deleted quite early on. Now, along the way, Pressure Sounds has reissued a lot of lost classics and introduced them to a whole new generation of listeners, myself included. The first time I ever heard this album was through the Pressure Sounds version, first on CD and then this LP. Album called Cool Roots by Earth and Stone. Fairly obscure roots duo, but a absolutely classic album. Rescued from obscurity by Pressure Sounds. And checking out this reissue actually led to me being able to purchase an original a year or two back. Another set that got deleted very early on, very crucial set, on Burning Spear, quite a well-known artist. Spear Burning, this is a collection of his self-productions and singles from the late 70s. Very hard-hitting roots here. Unfortunately, it was deleted from the Pressure Sounds catalog quite early, and this is actually related to that Mojo set that came out, as it features some songs by Philip Fullwood from Mojo, who was working with Burning Spear in this period. So some of the songs from the Mojo set appeared on this as well. Another somewhat controversial release at the time, as I've said before in some previous videos, in 1985 the sound of reggae changed with the advent of a more computerized sound, which is called digital reggae. This kind of turned off a lot of longtime fans used to the organic roots feeling. And Pressure Sounds in, didn't say the year on here, but Pressure Sounds LP 34, they put out Firehouse Revolution, which was digital productions from King Tubby, of course known for his roots dub instrumentals from the 70s. He moved with the times in the 80s and began putting out some hard-hitting digital reggae, which they compiled onto this set. Turned a lot of people's minds around about digital reggae, including myself. I know a friend of mine too had the same opinion, didn't really like the digital reggae until he checked out that set. Another album I first discovered through Pressure Sounds, The Royals, Pick Up the Pieces. I was finally also able to pick up a vintage press of that one recently. The great Joe Higgs, Life of Contradiction LP, classic from him. They also followed that up with another album by Joe Higgs, Unity is Power. Joe Higgs was famous for his tutelage of many up-and-coming reggae artists, including the Wailers, in the 60s, teaching them the fundamentals of music. Now, some very recent reissues or releases by Pressure Sounds leading up to that Mojo LP. Lloyd Parks and We the People Band, Meet the People. I've been kind of switching back, after starting out buying CDs and then switching to vinyl, I'm kind of starting to lean back to the CDs for Pressure Sounds lately, as they've been adding a lot of bonus cuts to the CD versions and sometimes doing bonus CDs like with that Mojo one. So that is Pressure Sounds 96 from 2017. Just finally getting around to picking that up. Another Bunny Lee production, Bunny Lee and the Aggravators, super dub disco style, paired up with Tommy McCook instrumentals, Disco Rockers, 2 CD set. And leading right up to the Mojo set, this is Pressure Sounds 99 from 2018, this year, just earlier this year. A Phil Pratt production, The War Is On dub style. Now, in addition to their regular releases, Pressure Sounds have put out a long-running series of singles. I have a few of those. I've never really concentrated too fully on them, but one that I did pick up was a crucial roots instrumental by a group called the Overnight Players, a tune called Shaka the Great. The Overnight Players were a session band in Kingston, so called because they would lock themselves in the studio overnight because it wasn't safe to be on the street or have people coming in the studio off the street. Crucial roots instrumental, reissued on single by Pressure Sounds. A friend of mine was collecting a lot of the Pressure Sounds singles. He's looking to downsize possibly in the near future, so I might be able to expand my Pressure Sounds singles collection shortly. The collection is definitely still growing. As well, Pressure Sounds briefly put out an imprint called Maximum Pressure, which focused on reggae productions from a later era, kind of late 80s, early 90s, an era not really covered by anybody else. They did one on, that's Flag Flown High, producer Bobby Digital. Again, these are late 80s, early 90s productions, an era really not well known by many collectors unless they were buying all the singles at the time, not really compiled by anybody else to any great extent. King Jammy, the Great Exterminator production. This was the sound that was ruling the day when I was first getting into reggae, so I have a lot of fondness for that music of that era. Some classic sounds, still underappreciated, I think. And Winston Riley's Dance Hall Techniques. Sadly, that would be the only 4 releases to appear on Maximum Pressure. They also put out a sub-label called Green Tea for more experimental music. But Pressure Sounds have continued reissuing rare and obscure reggae from 1995 up to the present day. 101 full-length releases actually. So here's to many more, and cheers to Pressure Sounds, and thanks for watching, guys.